How Yellowstone's Dutton family came from Sons of Anarchy explained. Taylor Sheridan's neo-Western drama Yellowstone helped to revitalize the Western genre in television. But it has its roots in another neo-Western that isn't always recognized as such, Sons of Anarchy. Starring Kevin Costner and a talented ensemble cast, Yellowstone became a runaway success thanks to its potent mix of drama, action, and an intoxicating Western setting. While the cowboys, rural setting, and gunfights certainly conjure classic Western vibes, the political maneuvering and corporate espionage ring of more modern dramatic fare, which is part of why Yellowstone's audience demographics are so varied and diverse. While Yellowstone has its own trademark aesthetic and lingo, creator Taylor Sheridan does draw on some of the best TV dramas of the last 30 years, which is a credit to him as a showrunner. The parallels between Yellowstone and FX's crime drama Sons of Anarchy, for example, are plentiful. The similarities are so abundant that Yellowstone has been referred to as Sons of Anarchy on horses in certain circles of the internet. Taylor Sheridan is one of TV's most talented and unique dramatic writers, to be sure, and the influence of Sons of Anarchy on Yellowstone is clear. Years before he put pen to paper on Yellowstone, Taylor Sheridan was a working TV actor who had a number of smaller roles to his name before Sons of Anarchy debuted in 2008. The award-winning family drama was set against the backdrop of an oftentimes violent motorcycle club's struggle to accumulate power, wealth, freedom, and revenge, although not necessarily in that order. Taylor Sheridan portrayed Deputy Sheriff David Hale for the first 3 seasons of the show, the straight-edge enforcer of the law and frenemy of the Sons of Anarchy motorcycle club. Sheridan's time in the main cast came to an end when his character was unceremoniously killed in a drive-by, which was reportedly forced as a result of a salary dispute, which saw Sheridan leave the show. Although SOA's creator, Kurt Sutter, has said Hale was killed because Sheridan wanted to pursue another project. While it was never directly addressed by Sheridan, many Yellowstone fans acknowledge that the Season 3 episode, Going Back to Cali, which sees John Dutton and the Yellowstone cowboys tackle with a biker gang from California, was a reference to Sheridan's bitter exit from Sons of Anarchy. In addition to the biker call-out in Yellowstone, there are a few other notable crossovers between the two shows. For example, Sheridan has used a few cast members from Sons of Anarchy in the ever-expanding cast of the growing Yellowstone universe. One of the most prominent is Koryanka Kilcher, the New World, who starred in Yellowstone as the vengeful litigator and business consultant Angela Blue Thunder more than a decade after playing Chip's daughter Carrie Ann Telford in Season 3 of Sons of Anarchy. Screen legend Robert Patrick, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, makes appearances in both Sons of Anarchy and the Yellowstone spin-off 1923. He plays the president of the Sons of Anarchy San Bernardino chapter, Lev Packer, and in 1923 Patrick portrays Sheriff William McDowell. LaMonica Garrett also features in both universes. He somewhat ironically plays David Hale's replacement, Deputy Sheriff Kane in Sons of Anarchy, while he played Pinkerton Agent Thomas in Yellowstone's spin-off, 1883. To most, Sons of Anarchy is considered a crime drama, more in line with gangster movies and television than a Western. However, in exploring the themes of the show, many of the hallmarks of a Western emerge. The members of SAMCRO are considered outlaws, a concept born straight out of Old West, and their rebellion against or subversion of the law is a consistent element of the group's activities. Their brand of justice often falls outside the law, and certainly fits the definition of the frontier justice of the West, where vengeance was often carried out on a personal level. Most importantly, Sons of Anarchy is framed around the themes of individualism and personal freedom, with the club working to impede the march of progress and change in their hometown. Therein lies its greatest tie to Yellowstone, and why both shows can and should be considered neo-westerns, with a genuine overlap in genre. John Dutton and his family work to keep the ranch pristine and preserve their way of life, just as the Sons of Anarchy do. Whether Taylor Sheridan distinctly intended it to or not, Yellowstone is a spiritual successor to Sons of Anarchy, in theme if not setting. Long before the wide skies of Montana stretched over John Dutton's empire, and decades before the Yellowstone brand was seared into the flesh of loyal ranch hands, a different kind of family ruled the West, not with horses and cattle, but with Harleys and handguns. That family? The Sons of Anarchy Motorcycle Club Redwood Original, SAMCRO. This theory begins with a man who straddled both worlds, blood and dust, engines and horses. His name was Jack Teller, an estranged cousin of Sons of Anarchy's iconic anti-hero Jax Teller. While Jax rode through charming on a Harley, balancing loyalty and lawlessness, Jack saw a different path, one carved not with bullets but with branding irons. Jack Teller's Great Escape. After Jax's death and the slow unraveling of SAMCRO's original leadership, Jack knew the writing was on the wall. He'd watched cousins die, brothers betray, and the soul of the club wither into a shadow. Jack had never been fully patched in, always seen as the oddball, too quiet, too principled. But he paid his dues, and when things got hot in California, Jack packed up his young son and pregnant wife and rode north, not into hiding, but toward a new legacy. Jack changed his name to John Dutton when he crossed into Montana, erasing his outlaw past and planting a new identity in the soil of the Big Sky Country. The land was wild, untamed, just like the club he'd left behind, but it offered something charming never could: peace. Or so he thought. Trading vests for vests, of the cowboy kind. At first, Jack, now John, struggled. He wasn't a cowboy, not really. But he knew about territory, loyalty, and control, values that translated well to ranching. He bought up land, fought off greedy barons, and grew the Yellowstone Ranch into a kingdom. The men he brought with him from SAMCRO, patched-out outlaws who didn't want to die in the California heat, became his wranglers, enforcers, and right-hand men. They wore denim now instead of leather, but their eyes were still sharp with the instincts of ex-gunslingers. And Jack never let go of the code, the brand. That idea came from SAMCRO tattoos. If you betrayed the club, you got your ink torched off. If you were loyal, you wore that ink with pride. So when he started branding Yellowstone workers, it wasn't just a ranch symbol, it was a mark of family. A way to build a new SAMCRO, one that rode horses instead of bikes, and protected cattle instead of gun shipments. Enter the second generation. Dutton blood runs red and rebellious. Jack's son, John Dutton too, grew up knowing only half the truth. He heard whispers about California, about a club with a Reaper logo, about shootouts and betrayals. But he was raised with discipline, the ranch way. He buried the old stories beneath layers of cowboy stoicism, but those rebel roots twisted through his blood. His parenting style, tough, old school, just like the club. Then came John Dutton IE, the one we know from Yellowstone. Played by Kevin Costner, John carries the air of a man who's always watching the horizon for danger. Why? Because his grandfather once wore a cut, and deep down, John knows the world isn't as peaceful as pastures and pine trees might suggest. He may wear a cowboy hat, but that outlaw blood burns just under the surface. His war with developers, politicians, and the reservation, it's not just about land. It's about territory, control, survival. These aren't battles between cowboys and corporations. They're echoes of biker wars repackaged in Stetsons. The influence of SAMCRO's code. The Sons of Anarchy had 3 sacred tenets: loyalty, brotherhood, and legacy. Sound familiar? Loyalty. John Dutton demands complete loyalty, just like Clay or Jax did. Brotherhood. The bunkhouse. That's a clubhouse in disguise. Rip, Lloyd, Colby, they function more like a motorcycle charter than cowhands. Legacy. Every move John Dutton makes is to preserve the Yellowstone ranch for his children. That's not just generational wealth, it's dynasty building, something Jax desperately tried and failed to do for Abel and Thomas. Rip Wheeler, he's a ghost of SAMCRO incarnate. A fierce enforcer, loyal to a fault, branded for life. If he'd been born in California, he'd be riding with a reaper on his back. Instead, he rides bulls and buries bodies in Montana. Beth Dutton, the Gemma teller of Montana. Let's talk about Beth. She may be John's daughter, but she channels Gemma teller Morrow in every breath. Sharp-tongued, manipulative, yet fiercely loyal to family. Like Gemma, Beth will go to war for the people she loves, torching lives and enemies alike. Her hatred for Jamie? That's classic club drama. A black sheep who can't quite live up to the code. She might wear designer heels instead of leather boots, but make no mistake. She's the kind of woman who could run a charter, bury a secret, or light a cigarette with the ashes of her enemies.